see where we go. This is kind of an interesting book. So lots of fun, I think. And John and I have had lots of discussions, and we have very different opinions on
No,
social
right
media.
on.
Welcome to this week's book club. Actually, this month, we only do it once a month. If we did books every week, we would all go bananas. Welcome to this month's book club discussion. I'm Paula Williams with ABCI. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services.
I'm John Williams, and I do all the back end stuff, or at least most of it for her.
Oh, I'm the Gene Clow, Great Circle aircraft broker out of the Northwest.
And I'm Dana Knight. I'm product director for ETT Aviation. We do software for airlines, and I focus on the flight planning system and our drone application.
Fantastic, which is a big deal this time of year with everybody doing more flights than ever before.
Yeah.
Crazy. Cool. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Gene, you had a first impression you wanted to share?
Yeah, I enjoyed the book. It's over the last years, 10 years or so, it's stuff that you've said many, many times, and they put it nicely into a book. They added some more directions towards conversations away from campaigns.
Yeah.
I did like that part, and probably early next year I'll make some changes to the website and what little bit of social marketing I do.
Excellent. Wow. Well, yeah, I think you've had quite an evolution since we started working together. We were doing postcards and website only, I think, when we started working together, and then we kind of dragged you kicking and screaming into some of the social media.
Well, and at the end of the day, in today's world, you really can't not be in social marketing, social media. It's just you are noticed by your absence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Although, I guess, a notable exception to that would be the late, great Jeremy Cox. He did social media for a while and then jumped out. And, the last couple of years, he never did social media, but he was a phone guy. I mean, he was on the phone all day, every day with people. And, I guess it's kind of a matter of using your tool of choice and what you're comfortable with. So I have seen people succeed very, very well with networking and with marketing without using social media at all. But I think it's the exception rather than the rule nowadays.
Oh, and they kind of actually took that to the next level, which I found interesting, because the nice thing about the telephone is you learn an awful lot about the person you're talking with.
Yeah.
So you get to that position, you get past vulnerability, and you get to trust.
Yeah.
Where with social media and websites, the first thing you get is distrust.
Yeah.
And whatever you put out there, now you got to prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
I'm going to go completely backwards from all of that.
Okay. I figured you would.
Not that I have a problem with it. I just like a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
The example I will use happened to me, about several weeks ago. So I was driving down Main Street in Salt Lake, and I saw this little electronics shop. And I have a project in my garage that I've worked on for damn near 20 years. And I couldn't get past wanting to spend more money on it. So I stopped into this place and told them, I need somebody that's smarter than me. And I said, that's probably pretty easy to do, but here's what I'm trying to do. And the guy said, oh, well, I'm not the guy. You need to go talk to this guy. And he wrote down his name, gave me his address on his business card. And I went over there and talked to that guy and told him the same story. And he said, oh, well, what you're doing, you actually need to go talk to this guy. So I called that guy and ended up meeting him for coffee that day. And we are basically in business together now. And it was and none of it on social media, none of it on one phone call. And that was just to set up a time to go talk to him over coffee at a restaurant. And
So just out of curiosity, what's the project that's been sitting for years?
Well, I have figured out how to develop. Do you know what Brown's gas is?
Right.
All right. Basically, Brown's gas, by most definitions, is hydrogen and oxygen in the same container produced from splitting water molecules.
Okay.
In fact, it's the most volatile stuff on the earth. I did that in the garage. I designed and built the electronics piece of it. A friend of mine designed and built the mechanical end of it. And in fact, one day Paul and I were out there, and the thing was bubbling away, and I said, "How do I know this is really Brown's gas? It could be just air, and this thing not doing a dang thing." So I
He
opened
says,
the top of it. I opened the valve just to fill it, not even to expand it, and took it outside, closed the garage door, and I said, "Would you light a match and give it to me?" So she did, and I held it up like this and put the match under it and released it, and went boom. I said, "Well, I guess that answers that question."
it was only about that much air or that much
So,
gas. So, yeah.
so now I've talked to a guy, and he has worked with the EPA, the California version of that, and has a way to make that, because I couldn't get it more than a half a liter a minute. The guy I'm working with can do up to 8 liters a minute. So now it's getting interesting.
Oh, I hope it's out of the garage.
Yeah,
It's out of the garage.
he's got a laboratory in center Utah, so it's out there. But then I went to an OFA meeting and talked to a lady, Laura, who's one of the people there. Because what I want to do is get an old APU, one that's run out. I don't care about paperwork and all that stuff, but something that'll start and run. So she says she can get one for me, and once we get to where we can get there, because I told her, I said, I'm not in a hurry because I got to fund this myself. So I want to run that thing on Brown's gas. And I talked to a turbine engineer and said, here's what I want to do, and here's why I want to start into it. And he said, that'll work. So what you're going to have to do, though, is you're going to have to take the nozzles out, the fuel nozzles out, and put smaller ones in and more of them. I said, okay, how do I do that? I said, you build it. You get a welder who knows how to do it. It's pretty easy. He said, well, I have a welder, so that's not a problem. So basically, that's what I want to do. And you know what? The output, when you oxidize hydrogen, what is the residue left over? Water.
Yeah.
And guess what you're using to produce it with? Water.
Right.
So I can scavenge the exhaust, run it back in to the fuel tank, and I'm good. It's not perpetual motion, but it's getting there.
Cool.
That's it in a nutshell. And so I went out and talked to people. I didn't go through social media, didn't go through email, I didn't go through phone conversation except to make a date for lunch. I told him I'll buy him coffee, and if it goes good, I said I'll buy you dinner.
Right.
And it ended up working, and then he invited me out to his lab, and I went out there, and we've been working on stuff as much as we both can afford it.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
I don't know where it's going. It may go nowhere, but what I'd like to have out of it is the generator I can run here at the house on water and not worry about power.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Well, the opposite of that is everybody on our team. Every single person except for John Quaffle, who we met in person, I think at an event or something like that. Everybody else we met at least the first time via some electronic means. And, we ended up having great relationships. And, I think it's not about the tool, it's about the depth. I mean, everybody gets hung up on social media is shallow or, whatever, and so forth and so on. But the difference is, if you follow the, what is it that they call it? The model of human relationships that is like an onion, you have your outside, you have your inner sides, inner, till you actually have a relationship that is worth something. how you get from one layer to the next and how you get to that first layer is irrelevant. What matters is how deep you go.
Well, but the thing too about the way I did it, I did
Yeah.
it all a day.
Okay.
And I don't think you could get people's trust in social media in a week.
Oh my gosh.
I
You know,
disagree. But go ahead, Gene.
It's not. It's going to be the number of contacts more than the number of days. But to your point, it's so true. It's eyeball to eyeball is not going to go away. And in fact, one of the things that Brooke, but she did give it away. That's not her real name. But
Yeah.
that Jennifer gave away in the book
Mhm.
was that it's not B2B. It's people to people, not business to business.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I've always had a little thing in the back of my mind about, well, how in the hell does B2B work? You know, it really doesn't until after you've had that personal contact. If ordering something from Amazon is B2B, then I'm guilty of doing that part. But
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, maybe a little too often. But when it comes to airplanes, it's always involved verbal communications, and 80% of the time you end up eyeball to eyeball.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally agreed. And in fact, she started out, with a pub crawl, so I mean, she didn't start with social media. She started with something that was as analog as you could get. And that's a pretty interesting story all in and of itself. But it is interesting how one media devolves into another for good or ill. But I think she hit it on the head. I mean, the biggest issue with social media is that people use it for broadcasting. They don't use it for listening. And then you're never going to get past that first layer if all you're doing is broadcasting. You're having one-way communications and people can see that. And, it's just a shallow thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it starts to get deeper when you start to have conversations and you start to respond, and then you start to have DMs, and then you start to take it in a different direction. And I mean, I just made 3 introductions yesterday with a young lady, who was looking for connections for a specific purpose, and, introduced her to 3 different people on LinkedIn, and they've gone off and had phone conversations and so on. I don't think you can beat social media as that first layer for efficiency or anything else. The OFA meeting was a pretty close second, just because it was, 40 people in a room for 3 days. And, so you're talking to the same 40 people and eating and socializing and talking about subject matter and everything else, and doing education classes and so on with the same 40 people for 3 days. That was pretty efficient. But when I'm looking for somebody specific for a specific thing, I just can't, there's just no way to beat social media.
No, this is exactly what I'm going through right now. I mean, Paula told you about this AppJax company that I'm working with, and
yeah, tell us a little bit about that, a little background, so that, because I think Gene may not know what that is.
yeah, so we did a pivot. I mean, we're a small company, and we don't have salespeople. I mean, I'm a former sales guy and hated it. That's why I left. But unfortunately, I did it for years. But we just didn't have a way to. We don't have a marketing department either. So we didn't really have a good way to do outreach. So thankfully we connected up with ABCI that does a lot of stuff for us. But I mean, we needed to, we're looking for leads. I mean, like everybody else, right? We're looking for leads. So we found this, I guess it was Sonia somehow found this AppJax company. And what they do is they use a LinkedIn profile. So they're using mine. And they have a lot of automation set up. So initially what they do is they go out, and we have basically the hard part was coming up with the filters that you can use in LinkedIn to try to make sure you're actually getting to your right target that you're trying to get to. So once that gets set up, then they unleash this automation, which generally starts with, it's just going out with a connection request and like, hey, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I think we should connect. And then if they if they respond positively, then they're in this marketing loop. Then we have this second message set up a little bit longer saying, well, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what we do. And then they have more. If you don't get more response, then they have like other messages that go out. And we initially tried it in North America for one of our products, and Paula knows FCMS, and it wasn't great. And I was actually getting ready to pull the plug on the whole thing, because the guy was very open with us. The owner of this company said, "Look, I've never dealt with a software company like you. I have no idea how this is going to work. So normally I would make people commit for 6 months, but we won't do that, right? We'll go month to month. If it works, great. If it doesn't, fine." So then, because I now have my flight planning system ready to go international, we shut off the FCMS one and we turned on the flight planning one. And so we're going global. And I mean, it's keeping me really busy right now, because I'm getting a lot of responses back. And so that, like you're saying, you start a conversation. I mean, what I've found is international people, especially in the Middle East and like Africa, won't just accept a connection request. They'll also say, "Yeah, thanks for connecting," or "happy to meet you," or something like that. So then you can start a conversation with them rather than that they're just the connection. I mean, Paul, if you look at my profile now, I think I've got close to 3,000 connections. I mean, we're probably
Wow.
1,000 when you and I started last year, at the beginning of the year. So it's been really interesting, and it's actually developed into a couple leads. Are they super hot? Not at this point, but at least we're getting something out of it. I mean, and the weirdest part for me is that I've been in the airline industry for 30 years, and I'm getting stuff from airlines. I have no idea who these people are. I've never heard of them.
Wow. That's great.
So yeah, it's been an interesting project, and it's only been going on for a couple of weeks now. So
Well, I'm glad it took that turn, because
yeah,
I remember last time we talked, it was not going fabulous, but
yeah,
that's amazing. And I guess, sometimes you hit a different market that's not as saturated, because I know
right,
a lot of people are focused on the United States, and those types of programs, I know there's better and worse ones, but a lot of the worst ones are focused on the United States. So I get these things all the time about Bitcoin and PMI memberships and this and that and the other thing. And I just ignore them because I get so many of them. But if you hit a market that's not saturated, then people respond, and it actually starts a real conversation, and it's great. So
yeah. So far so good. I'm pretty happy. And then so we did that ATAC. You did some of the stuff for us for that ATAC meeting in Canada
yeah.
a few weeks ago, and that thing was actually kind of a bust, unfortunately.
Mm.
And talking to them up there, a lot of the other guys, and they're like, a lot of the other vendors, it's like, there's just not a lot of airlines in Canada. There's just
Yeah.
not. So it's not like when we do the conferences in the States, not only are they doing people from the States, but they're like in South America, Central America, all those guys will come up. That's for that Miami meeting. But I mean, it's a Canadian meeting, so you're just going to get Canadian people, and there's just not enough people there. So
Um,
we're bailing on that trade show for next year, but I've added another one, a different one.
cool. So that one, we would have been better off just targeting Canadian Airlines and being done with it, and saving your travel and saving your feet and the
Yeah,
whole 9 yards. So
yeah,
um,
yeah. So anyway, but
cool.
yeah, no, I'm pretty thrilled with the tap checks. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your experience with that. That actually is and I guess, the difference between what a lot of people do with social media and what you're doing is the two-way communication. Even if it's automated, automation doesn't matter. The media doesn't matter. The automation doesn't matter. What matters is that you're actually using it in a way that you're reaching the right people and having the right conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's exactly what she's talking about with the book, is just people are using it wrong. Yeah. But yeah, I like real life case studies a whole lot better than what's in the book. But the ones in the book are also really good.
That was actually a conversation we had not too terribly long ago. Was
Mhm.
that one of the things that I saw with LinkedIn was my fellow brokers were advertising airplanes for sale on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, this is an interesting way to go about this, because then how do you then follow up and tell them, hey, that thing's no longer available.
Yeah.
If some of that stuff is out there forever.
Yeah.
So if you're following Brooks' line of thinking, you don't put a single product out there. You tell your story,
Right.
and that would be the better way to go. At least that's what I got from reading the book.
Mhm.
And the messengers have done this for a long time.
Mhm.
Josh, and well, and when I asked him how it was working for him, he had the answer that 99% of the people would answer with, "I don't know." Yeah, so
They have no idea how well it's working. Well, and
no,
it's yeah.
well, and again, it's because they were on so many different mediums when
Mhm.
it came to advertising. So
Yeah.
that you spend your money on controller.com, you spend your money by your multiple listing services, and I like her concept of don't pick 20 platforms, pick 3,
Yeah.
and then you have to monitor them, which I might be able to say I might not be real good at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Understood.
but that was interesting. That's going to be a change for 2024 for me.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And I think, our advice has always been, pick 2 that are your primary, and then everything else is kind of an also ran. So you're using, like we're using YouTube and LinkedIn are our primaries, and then everything we create is optimized for YouTube and LinkedIn. And then we also publish to other media saying, see this on LinkedIn, or, subscribe to us on LinkedIn for more current information and things like that. But it does, then some of our platforms are just broadcasting, and we're doing exactly what we shouldn't be doing in that sense, other than the fact that if we draw people into the channels that we do use, why not? Why not do incrementally this much more effort to expand the reach that much further? Even if we're not having two-way conversations on that media, at least we're bringing people into our primaries, and I can monitor too. But
Yeah,
you can't legitimately
I,
monitor everything.
yeah, I hope I can monitor too. I'll let you know.
Okay, good. You'll have to let us know which ones you choose. I know David Hasselberg is a broker that's selling a lot of general aviation aircraft on Facebook very successfully, but he even says it's a huge pain in the tail because half of the communications are people who are looking at an airplane that's already been sold, even though it says in the comments, if they care to read, this plane was sold on this day. People will go back to a listing from 3 months ago and ask him about this plane. And he's, saying, well, no, but I have another one like it, and so he's turning those conversations around into, here's another one that's for sale that's similar in this way. But it's a huge pain in the tail to keep up with all those conversations. And he spends a lot of time on Facebook managing and monitoring all of that. And if you look at the conversations, I don't know how he does it, because I would be so frustrated with people asking the same questions over and over that are already answered in the comments 7 times, but he does a nice job of building relationships and establishing rapport and, all of that. And he's got the patience to do that. So it's a good tool for him because he loves it, so that works. If he didn't, then it would suck. Because he'd just be making listings that are frustrating to everybody because they're out of date. And, people would have a bad experience with him, and they would probably pass around their bad experience, and say, well, his listings are never up to date and and everything else. And even if they were doing it wrong, to begin with. So, that's, it's on him to make sure that he gives them a good experience, even if they are not as familiar with the platform and not using it in the way that he intended for them to be using it. So I think it's really loves people and loves planes. So
yeah, but that's an interesting catch up, because conversations that connect would tell you that what she would do is she'd go back and she'd measure all these contacts and the amount of time you're spending on something you can't deliver because it's already been sold.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what her answer would be. Would Brooke come back and say, look, the story should be, this is what you sold, not what's available for sale?
Yeah.
and therefore that, and then if they want to contact you and say, do you have one like it?
Mhm.
Which obviously they was a question they would have if they inquired about a specific product.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting measurement. And quite honestly, when I read the sections on measurement, I'm thinking, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. But your part of this conversation says, well, maybe you should.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the hard thing is, those are harder things to measure because, how would you measure a conversation that had 4 steps and went from a plane that was sold 6 months ago to a plane that's for sale now that resulted in a transaction? There is no method using Facebook's measurement tools to track that sort of a thing. You know what I mean? Because it's just too complex and has too many steps.
Well, that's so true. And I have no idea what he's using for customer relationship software.
Mhm.
But even then, I mean, and his fingers have got to be able to go about 90 miles an hour faster than mine
Mhm.
to be able to keep up with something like that on even logging it and the follow-up.
Mhm. I think his phone is permanently in his hands with his thumbs going like this, no matter what he's doing in the rest of the world. So
I'm wearing out that end of my thumb.
there
Hey,
you
Paul,
go.
unfortunately, I got to jump. I got another
Okay.
big call, but I'll be on the group office hours later.
Excellent. Well, good to see you, and thanks for jumping in.
All right, take
Hey,
care.
All right, thanks.
before you run, do you get information from corporate jet investors, CJI?
Me personally, no.
Yeah. I'll send it off to Paula and she can forward it to you. They did a really nice article on software packages that are available within the industry.
Mhm.
I'll send that off to you because it's, first of all, as you've probably already figured out, it's amazing. There's way too many of them, but it's amazing. It's like learning about airlines you never heard about, and then all these software packages show up and you go, where in the heck did that come from?
Yeah, right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good deal. See ya.
Thanks, Steve.
Dana.
See you, Dana. Cool. Well, yeah, I think it was a great book. Did we want to? Did you have anything else you wanted to share, or do you want to wrap up, or how do we want to
Well, I'm
recover from
thankful.
that?
I'm thankful John never blew up the garage. Yeah.
Yeah, we were never in any danger of that, but I am very happy that he's now their lab is in the middle of what is it, Duchesne?
Yeah, just I'm pretty sure I'm thinking about this. Like, does John really need another job?
Of course he does. He's got his finger in so many pies. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, and mine is riding a motorcycle and fly fishing, so I don't have time for another job.
There you go. No, you leave him alone for a couple of days and he'll have another hobby. So
Yeah,
we can't have that.
I'm going to send that information from CJI off to you, and you can share it as widely as you want to. It's obviously a well-known organization, and it was a non-solicited email to me.
Right.
Other than I'm on their mailing list.
Mhm.
But go ahead and share that as you please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure he will appreciate that. He's sort of the airline, so he's a little bit different than the CJI market, but I'm sure it's great to know what's going on in the rest of the industry as well. So that's cool. And I don't think anybody's ever done a survey of software before, but should. So yeah.
When I was with Flight Safety International, I was the learning center manager for their airline stuff in the Boeing here in the Seattle area. So I had 7 simulators out here, and one of my jobs was to try to keep them busy. And this is prior to 95. So it was magazines and whatever publications I could get. And back in the day, Aviation Week had a publication that was focused on airlines. And so I developed the database of who the airlines were. And then I needed to talk with their director of training, obviously, if they're going to utilize flight safety simulators. Well, then they published a article of all the simulators in the world. And that turned it into quite the math project, because it's how many airplanes do you have to have before you buy your first simulator? because they're so
Ah,
danged expensive.
right.
So yeah. So it turns out to be about 12.
Oh,
Oh, on a 737, it's 12. And because if you figure it out, you've got, once you meet critical mass, it
yeah.
takes five crew members per airplane to fly that thing, um, uh, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So by the time you do, seven crew members. In a 747, it's almost double that number because of the number of hours that thing will fly.
Mm,
So it was an interesting thing, but it taught me how to get my marketing to the focus point on which airlines to contact to utilize our simulators, because of course we have flight safety has no airplanes of that size, and they don't have an airline. Then, but it was interesting. So what Dana's up to is a interesting exercise,
yeah.
and yeah, and I wish him well. I look forward to seeing him at the front page of the Wall Street Journal being very successful.
Yeah, that will be great. And I think that will happen. But yeah, it's funny because, on social media, one of the memes that they have now is, boy math, girl math, and you just explained Boeing math. So that's a
Yeah.
whole other thing that actually
Well,
could be a really nice entree into, some of the right people who need to know. They probably had no idea how to figure out when is the break even point until you told them, this is how we figured out, and this is how we arrive at that conclusion.
yeah, yeah, actually, in way true. And to his point, I get invited by airlines all over the world to come to their aviation shows.
Hmm.
Like Dana going to Canada.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go to Sao Paulo for the Brazil airline industry. Pardon me, but that doesn't make sense. I already know who your chief pilots are. I know who your director of training is. What am I going to learn once I get there? So it was interesting, and I understand exactly where he's coming from on how does he find that person within the organization that says, we want your product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's honing in on that, I think, using this software, and using LinkedIn pretty nicely because, a lot more people are on it and a lot more people are listing their job title and things so that they're keeping it current and he can find the right person in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll send this to you. And one of the things I was thinking is that somebody in the airline industry probably produced a similar list. But if not, that could be John's next job.
Okay. John, you have an assignment. That's cool.
Okay, I'll get going. It's always great to catch up with you.
Absolutely. Have a great week. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.